technology. Brilliant, isn't it? Let's try again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sawadee ka.
Sawadee ka. This is the War Memorial
Museum of the
um,
war, and also the Museum of Kanchanaburi,
yeah,
and which
is
tied into the Museum of Thailand.
yeah. So this is like a museum of ancient Thailand, tracking through the history. Behind us, we see the museum, the Thai museum, which is absolutely just spectacular.
Although you leaning over that way, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. These people we see here are kings, former kings of Thailand,
or warriors that
notable in history.
Yes.
Around us, well, let me just do this and let's give you an idea. No, this is a absolutely incredible place.
It is that. The historical side of things starts in what would be the Stone Age in Britain. There's a chamber downstairs which marks the earliest Thai folk, and some producer you are.
Yeah, I know.
You're sacked.
Well, I'm in front of the camera rather than behind it. That's the problem.
Camera woman, producer, news reporter.
The guy to my right here, just for example, this gentleman, he was...
Microphone.
Oh, I've got this over here. Wait, I'll just read from the board. He was, what do they call him? He was the son of the king in the dynasty of northern part of Thailand. He ruled the Phang city when he was 36 years old in 1239. And he apparently died when he was 78 in a thunderstorm while riding an elephant.
He brought peace to the region.
Yeah.
He established peace talks with 3 of the surrounding kings.
Yeah.
And during his reign, war pretty much was non-existent.
Yeah.
So he was a bit of a guy, and he formed a strong alliance with one of the neighbouring kings. So. And his name, which temporarily is...
Oh, hold on a minute. I'm going to pause this for a moment.
Okay.
If they don't shut up and piss off.
Paused?
Pause. No, hold on a minute. We will continue this in a minute. There might be a part 2 because of the editing problems. No, I think it's good now. Drop off. Thank you.
Guide.
Yeah, good. Loud German guide. Great. I'm trying to avoid any comments about that.
Yes.
I did take your picture with Adolf, didn't I?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Back to the story now.
Okay.
Are
you recording again now? Are you?
No, I didn't stop.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. We went to the Grand Palace the other day. Yeah.
Yeah. In Bangkok.
And it was overwhelming. Yeah, I think a place of beauty, but at the same time, it was just too much, mainly in the way of tourists. And there was too many people, too many people, too hectic, too busy, and too much sort of like, oh, we've got loads of money,
Yeah, but the whole thing about that place is it was built as a palace. It's, it doesn't have a big connection to the people as such. It's, you're talking about a reigning monarch who built it at vast expense, and that expense would have been fronted by the people.
Yeah.
Very similar to the palaces and stately homes that we have in the UK that are owned allegedly by royal families and add-ons and other parasites.
Yeah.
So as you can tell, I'm not really a royalist.
Yeah.
I'm a Republican.
Anyway, back to the storyline.
So at the Grand Palace, you had this vast building coated in gold leaf, and also just spectacularly gaudy.
Yeah.
And you know, I mean, okay, around here there is a lot of gold paint, but
Mm.
this one behind us, rather than using gold leaf and so on, it's actually used
It's
a
just
form of
strange.
paint.
It's
And
weird.
beautiful.
Yeah, they've painted this building and they've inserted plates
Yeah,
into
as
the
you can
walls.
see, there's plates and bowls,
It's, you know, it's
and
incredible.
it's, you know, it's set
Mm.
into the concrete, and it's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah. Now downstairs here, we've just gone and looked through the history from World War II.
That's pretty heart-wrenching, isn't it? The Japanese advancing forces used slave labour in the form of POWs that they captured, and also local people. Now the POWs were listed as how many died. Many of them died of malaria, contracted from mosquito bites. They were kept in railway carriages overnight, which were locked, so they must have suffered horrendously.
Mm.
So,
Because the heat,
however,
you know.
on top of that, I mean that's horrendous already, but on top of that, the local people were brutalised, and they suffered greatly at the hands of the Japanese. And there's unrecorded numbers of how many of them died, and it is just horrifying. And they pretty much just scooped them up and buried them in the forest wherever there was a space. So nobody recorded how many there were, nobody kept any kind of records of who they were. They would have disappeared. And obviously that's something that happens time and time again in various war-torn nations. But that was a particularly serious crime committed to the locals by the Japanese during the Second World War. And I can see it upsets you greatly. And one of the things we saw downstairs was they've got a recreation of the POWs laying the railway track, and you can see they were starved, they were tortured, and they were next to naked in this hot sun, so they must have really just suffered agonies. As well as the torture, there was the malaria. And you know, Carol gets very emotional about these things because the whole display, you know, I looked at that, and I can usually walk around and I look fairly kind of like, you know, the big goth image, but looking at that set us thinking. That, you know, the only time I've experienced something similar is when I walked around Belsen and
I'm
I saw
angry
the
as
mass
well.
graves. We're
Really angry. Yeah.
because the tourists that went along that brief section of railway line and were laughing and joking and being quite inappropriate really for something that's actually quite dark, and yet you come here and there's so few people, and okay, there's a few popping in and out, but there were hundreds of those
we
tourists
caught
on
a
that
train
train.
yesterday, and they crammed the tourists in.
Yeah.
European tourists came in. The train was full for its 20
For-
minutes.
If that.
Yeah, you know, just to see the bit of railway so they could go home and report.
We've been on the famous bit of Trust Railway, which was smashed to pieces by the Allied bombing in the Second World War, and to basically stop the supply lines for the Japanese forces. So one of the displays downstairs actually shows the Allies bombing the railway line whilst Allied POWs are working on it. And I guess so the deaths were quite horrendous.
And it's all of it. Oh, let's go and do that. Let's get on the train and stuff. And nobody, you know.
Yeah. Whereas the museum here is spectacular. In places it's very dark with the historical terrors that have happened to this region. And it's in a way it's sadly neglected. More people should come here and see what happened.
Yeah.
So, and also the gentleman that runs the place is lovely.
Yeah. This place should be supported more.
Definitely. Anyway, that's us. Curious Adventures. So, believe it or not, Carol is happy. Sawadee ka.
Sawadee ka.